Okay, wonderful. We are going to start the next chapter, which is called There is a Solution. Oh, moved too fast. Okay, just a reminder that this is not an AA meeting. We're here to learn specific facts, history, and context for our textbook, Alcoholics Anonymous. And we're going to go for 30 minutes today and then open up the parking lot at the end. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can email us at this email. And just a reminder of the other materials that we suggest. Okay, there is a solution, page 17. Solution is not an answer, right? So a solution is a process. And in our case, so the example here is 2 plus 4 equals 6. The solution is the process of addition, and the answer is 6. So what we're talking about here, and this is the process of addition, which is actually the steps. And the answer is a spiritual awakening. So just to give an example of what the solution is, and notice that it uses a, there is a solution, which is singular, right? There's not my solution, your solution, his, hers, yada, yada, yada. There aren't different versions of the solution for the different people in the program. It is one singular solution, which is the process, the steps. And it says we of Alcoholics Anonymous. And every time it says we, we're thinking of the first 100 men and women. The first 100 men and women now know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill, and nearly all have recovered. What does all mean, right? Of the first 100 men and women recovered. Now, you will hear people right now, this day and age, talk about you don't recover. We are constantly recovering. This is a hot topic of debate amongst our fellowship. So what does it mean to have recovered? Recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. I always refer to the bottom of page 84, which says, and we've ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. And the time we're talking about here is step 10. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as if from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us with any thought or effort on our part. It just comes, right? Because it's a symptom of something deeper within. So if we're treating the causes and conditions, we're getting to what's the problem within, then the symptoms fall, right? So that is the miracle of it. We are neither fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We've not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed, right? The symptoms fell off because we treated the causes and conditions. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. And this is our experience so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. So it's not like they're saying, oh, from here on out, you're never going to have an issue. We even read in Bill's story that he wasn't well. He was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment, right? But if we look to the steps in 10, 11, and 12, we see that those are daily actions. That's our exercise from day to day to keep us in fit spiritual condition. So we are average Americans, all sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We're people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We are like the passengers of a great liner the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. So steerage are the cheapest seats on the ship, captain table is the most expensive. So, if the ship should wreck, until, they're trying to help each other out and survive the situation, everyone is equal and they're not worried about like the socioeconomic differences. But once they get back into life and everything, that subsides, right? We're back into our socioeconomic status. Well, unlike that, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside when we go our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us, but that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. The tremendous fact, I feel like I have, no? Okay. The tremendous fact for every one of us, the first 100 men and women, is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. Now, just ask yourself, is that your experience? Check your own experience. Is that what you experience? Or when you go and you're talking to people, do you hear a bunch of contradictory things like, take what you want and leave the rest? There's just a whole bunch of slogans and platitudes that are going around, and they may not be in alignment with the message of our textbook. My favorite one is think, 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 right? What a joke. And we have that on the walls all over the place. The very problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. And we put think, 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 right? We are at certain times without defense against, we are without a mental defense against the first drink. Oh, but remember your last drunk, think it through, come on, we can do better than this. And so the example here is that the message has been watered down and changed like the telephone game since this book was written. I don't think that we can absolutely agree and that we're joining in brotherly and harmonious action. So this is the great news this book carries for those who suffer from alcoholism. An illness of sort, and we've come to believe it an illness, which is now recognized by the American Medical Association, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him and no one is angry or hurt. But not so with the alcoholic illness, for with it goes annihilation of all things worthwhile in life, and it engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. And just check your own experience. So right here, we're going to pause. I'm going to talk about the circle of engulfment, which comes from this sentence. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. And remember, we already defined suffering as without choice. Enduring without choice. That's what it means to suffer. There is no choice. So the alcoholic is enduring this progression down the doom curve without a choice. And as they are doing that, it's engulfing people around them, people at work, their family, their friends. Engulfing means to sweep over so as to completely surround or cover it completely, eat or swallow. So you want to take a chance, not take a chance, but take a moment and do this exercise. So you put yourself here in the middle, the alcoholic, and think about, when you were at the height of your illness, the height of like consumption of alcohol and drugs, think about it for a moment. What was it like for everyone around you? Or what about in dry sobriety, right? Just, put the plug in the jug, don't drink one day at a time and a cake pops out every year. That's different than growing along spiritual lines, than working the steps, and now you have somebody who is not getting a sense of ease and comfort from alcohol. yet still exhibiting all the symptoms of alcoholism on page 52, still has the RIDS, restless, irritable, discontent, right? What do you think that does to people at work? You think I want to work with someone like that? Shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow all day when they're just miserable? No, no, no. No, thank you. So this is a chance to practice introspection and see how we have engulfed other people around us. Okay, so we hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or may be affected. There are many. Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve. Strangely enough, wives, parents, and intimate friends usually find us even more unapproachable than do the psychiatrist or the doctor, right? So this is the beginning of understanding that only an alcoholic can help another alcoholic, right? Until we win their confidence and their trust, more likely they are not being honest with people, right? Fear and self-centeredness, ego, all of that is running the show. Makes it impossible for them to be honest. So it usually takes somebody who's recovered and who can do the process outlined on page 42, which is to show them alcoholic mentality, right? That's how we win the confidence. And our message must have depth and weight. Meanwhile, they're not going to get anywhere over here because they're not being honest. And I mean, there's more reasons why this won't work. I mean, first of all, they may not be doing the right approach. We have to be convinced of A, B, and C. A, B, and C, right? That I'm alcoholic and cannot manage my own life. Well, first of all, you have to be able to define alcoholism physically and mentally different from my fellows. And that is where, like the Oxford group kind of missed the mark there without having the physical definition, which is what Bill won Bob's confidence with in that first 15-minute meeting. So there's a lot to unpack here. But the ex-problem drinker who has found the solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. And until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. So let's go over to page 42 and dive deeper into this concept. We are learning how to work with an alcoholic, which is the most important skill that I will ever learn. Two of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and they asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. Well, I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality such as I had exhibited in Washington was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen, and this process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Then, right? So after we understand the mental and physical differences of being an alcoholic and are convinced on those, then they outline the spiritual answer and the program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had only been a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window, right? Let go of your old ideas or the result was nil. Let go of old ideas, prejudice, preconceived ideas, right? It's not easy. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved and was in fact proved to be. All right, page 18, the fourth paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the ex-problem drinker, that's the page we just read. So here are some important instructions on how to work with an alcoholic, okay? And my personal thing is that I just want to share is that, There is usually a coffee shop in town with that the people of the fellowship frequent. I don't know about where you live, but and you will see them. You will see the sponsor and the sponsee meeting to do their step work, right? And they usually have the 12 and 12, not even the big book. Right there, you lost me. But anyway, and you can't help but overhear sometimes, and I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that sponsor just talking about themselves over and over and over again, right? Just talking. And, you know, when we share our story, when we share our experience, it's supposed to be about this. What we read on page 42, showing the alcoholic mentality, winning their confidence. We must have depth and weight. And we are in a position where no one else can help what we can. We hold the key for someone else to get sober. So it's of utmost importance that we learn to do this correctly. And it is so easy to get carried away and talk about yourself, right? Selfishness, self-centeredness, right? That's who we are. That's our default. So we have to practice a little bit of discipline here. And it helps to figure this out ahead of time before you go meet with that person. So you can show them the alcoholic mentality. When did you have the strange mental blank spot? When did the insane idea went out, right? An obsession is a persistent reoccurring thought that does not respond to reason. What from your experience can you quickly and logically communicate that to the person? Talking about, you know, being drunk in Mexico for 8 days when in a blackout, sure, I'd like to ramble on about that whole thing, but it it's not going to really help someone. We have to get better at this. That the man who is making the approach, okay, just stop there for a second. Who is doing the approaching? We are proactive about seeking someone to work with, right? What I mainly see is that miraculously, if someone can get quote unquote to step 12, then they're sitting there at the meeting waiting for someone to ask them to be their sponsor. Well, some of us are sicker than that and need to get to work earlier than that, as it states in the doctor's opinion, a part of our rehabilitation, our design for living, our way of life. I can't sit in a room and just wait for someone to ask me. I've got to make that approach. So instead of just like, I mean, yes, of course, you can go up to the newcomer and offer your phone number. That's awesome. But what I did instead, or in addition to, was make an announcement. You know, at the end of the meeting, they said, are there any non-AA announcements or AA announcements? Doesn't matter. I say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm an alcoholic. And I read in the doctor's opinion that part of my rehabilitation is working with other alcoholics. Currently, someone is taking me through the big book, approaching this like a textbook. And I need to find someone else to take through the big book as I'm being taken through the big book. Is there anyone here willing to meet with me for an hour and let me do that? To help me, you know, this is part of my rehabilitation. And that's how I got started. So that's how I made the approach. I'm sure that you are intelligent and creative and can think of multiple ways to do that. So that the man who is making the approach has had the same difficulty, and that he obviously knows what he's talking about, and then his whole department shouts to the new prospect that he's a man with a real answer. Then he has no attitude of holier than thou, nothing whatever, except the sincere desire to be helpful. That there are no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. And after such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. has anyone demonstrated to you how to effectively make the approach, right? Is your sponsor training you on how to do this? Remember page 89, nothing so much ensures immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Well, if that's the number one thing that's going to save my life, then I would like a little instruction or direction or examples on how to do that. Something really strong, you know, not what I was trained to do before I came across the Big Book study. So none of us makes a sole vocation of this work, nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. We feel that an elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. All of us, the first 100 men and women, spend their spare time working with other alcoholics, right? Think about it. Think about who you know in your home group. Could you say that about your home group? Do they all spend their spare time working with other alcoholics? A few are fortunate enough to be so situated that they can give nearly all their time to the work. Okay, so we have a few cross references to go over here. And I don't have the third edition with me, so I'm going to skip this XXIV. Let's go to page 56, the second paragraph. One night, when confined in a hospital, he was approached. Uh-oh, who does the approaching? By an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself the question, is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came, and it crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? But the point of this is at the beginning that he was approached by an alcoholic, right? You want to ask yourself, how many people have you approached? How many opportunities have you created for someone else to get sober? And at the end, when this is all said and done, are you leaving a trail of recovered alcoholics behind you? Or are you leaving a perfect meeting attendance card where you spent most of that time talking about yourself? Page 76, last paragraph. Probably there are still some misgivings. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we may feel different about going to some of them on a spiritual basis, but let us be reassured. To some people, we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. We might prejudice them. So, this is talking about the approach when making amends. You know, there are no wimps on the spiritual path. We are going to have courage. Going out, working with other alcoholics, making amends, all of this, fear will be present. But courage is not the absence of fear, it's doing it anyway. And we are no wimps. Page 77, first paragraph. At the moment, we are trying to put our lives in order, but this is not an end to itself. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. It is seldom wise to approach an individual who still smarts from our injustice to him and announce that we've gone religious. In the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatics or religious bores? We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message. But our man is sure to be impressed with the sincere desire to set right the wrong. He's going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than our talk of spiritual discoveries. It's more about what you do than what you say, right? Page 90, second paragraph. If there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious learnings. You need this information to put yourself in his place to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned. Wow, that's spending a lot of time thinking about someone else, huh? Pretty great, so that you can make the approach. Page 153, the second paragraph. Our hope is that when this chip of a book is launched on the world tide of alcoholism, defeated drinkers will seize upon it to follow its suggestions. Many, we are sure, will rise to their feet and march on. They will approach still other sick ones, and fellowships of Alcoholics Anonymous may spring up in each city and hamlet, havens for those who must find a way out. In this chapter, Working with Others, you gathered an idea of how we approach and aid others to health. Suppose now that through you, several families have adopted this way of life. You will want to know more of how to proceed from that point. Perhaps the best way of treating you to a glimpse of your future will be to describe the growth of the fellowship among us. All right, multiple examples here of who's making the approach. 163, the fourth paragraph. So our fellow worker will soon have friends galore. Some of them may sink and perhaps never get up. But in our experience, if our experience is a criterion, more than half of those approached will become fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. Awesome. I hope it is clear now who does the approaching. Okay, we have some more notes still on this very same passage that we just read. A vocation is an occupation, profession, or mission. An avocation, right? When you put the A in front of a word, it means the opposite. And it says in the Roman numeral section that we would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation. An avocation is an activity taken up in addition to one's work or profession. And in the long form of the traditions, it says here, our usual 12-step work is never to be paid for, right? And I think that's kind of super awesome important, because if selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of my trouble, then altruistic, unselfish action is the solution. And I don't want to sell that. It's all that I have to be alive, to be sober, to be alive, and not live in absolute hell or die, right? It's the very thing that gets me off that tune curve. So it is not for sale. All right. And when it says all, we already talked about this. We're talking about the first 100 men and women, and the effort they're referring to is working with others. We have some more cross references here talking about this demonstration. Page 14. Okay, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. And if he didn't work, he would surely drink again. And if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. Page 77. We just read that. Page 78, the first paragraph. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Sometimes the men we are calling upon admits his own fault, so feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we are doing and wish us well. Occasionally, they will offer assistance. It should not matter, however, if someone does not throw us out of his office. We have made our demonstration, done our part, it's water over the dam. So as you can tell here, we're looking for all the ways that it says demonstration in the big book. Page 98, the third paragraph. 1, 2, 3. Now the domestic problem, there may be divorce, separation, or strained relations. When your prospect has made such reparation as he can to his family and has thoroughly explained to them the new principles by which he is living, he should proceed to put these principles into action at home. That is, if he's lucky enough to have a home. Though his family may be at fault in many respects, he should not be concerned about that. He should concentrate on his own spiritual demonstration. Argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. Page 83, second paragraph. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought to not urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. So those are examples of how we demonstrate these principles in all our affairs. And we're going to stop right here and open up the parking lot. Are there any parking lot questions today?
The only question that kind of came up is working with how to work with alcoholics. And you had said, discussing when the strange mental blank spot takes over, I think, and when the obsession wins over. And I think you had mentioned something else, but are those the two main things? Because you had mentioned, I mean, not the main things, but those are two things that you said are important when working with other alcoholics. Is that true? The strange mental blank spot and when the obsession wins over? Is there anything else regarding those things? I think there was a third thing that you mentioned too.
Well, I would say the phenomenon craving.
Okay.
Which I don't think I mentioned, but those are the three, core ideas about what it means to be an alcoholic.
Right. And the phenomenon of craving is how we are bodily, not only mentally, but the bodily different than our fellows.
Yes.
Yeah. And the strange mental blank spot and the obsession is how we're mentally different than our fellows.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I had notated those things as far as working with other alcoholics, because I've been worked with by other alcoholics, and there has, I don't think, never has there really been an emphasis on maybe the phenomenon of craving, but definitely not discussing the strange mental blank spot, which is a big thing, and the obsession, So in all the years since '09, and there's been a lot of sponsorship and step work, nobody's ever really discussed that with me. And those are big things.
Oh my God.
Yeah, those are big things. Like the blank spot, which is like, I'm understanding the blank spot personal experience is like that spot that's like, well, it's okay. I mean, it's just all this stress and it's just this one little moment, second in time, which makes absolutely no sense. And then in that blank moment, there's like, okay, I'm going to have this drink. Correct? Would that align with the strange mental blank spot?
Well, yes, but it can also be that the mind doesn't check in with you at all. You just find yourself drinking.
Right. Check in at all. Yeah. Right. And then the obsession, when the mind is that's self-explanatory. The mind is like thinking about it relentlessly. It doesn't respond to reason. The mind fails to respond to reason.
Exactly.
Right?
Whatever reason we have for not drinking is less powerful than the obsessive thought to drink.
Right. Yeah. And then the phenomenon is simply, now I've put it in my body, and it's like Russian roulette. Like, fuck, what's going to happen now? Like, is this going to be the next 2 months of my life? Is this going to be the next year of my life? Is this going to, how long is this going to be? Where and how deep and dark is this going to go? Because now it's in my body, and it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's like just not knowing what's going to happen now that I've awoken the monster. Correct?
Exactly. You're just a passenger in a car.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You can't get, you're locked in there. You can't get out. You can't decide to turn left. You can't take over.
Right.
Beyond human aid.
Right. And recovered, meaning that we recover from a hopeless state of body and mind, that happens. And that talks about where we don't fight it. We're not fighting temptation. We're not, it's a non-issue anymore.
Right, because it's a symptom, right? The obsession, all of that is a symptom of something deeper within. So the steps are a process of treating those causes and conditions. And so if you don't have the core cause, then the symptom falls away.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And the remaining steps, which are some of the action steps, like writing out a fourth step, sharing it in a fifth step, and that type of thing, step 8, the list of people, and then making amends. Those are things that assist in treating the causes and condition. Is that also
Yes.
true? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And in the meantime, until someone is at that juncture, there is always work with an alcoholic that can keep a person without a drink until it's time to treat the causes and conditions.
Yes. And in my experience, I couldn't get through, steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, unless I was working with alcoholics, a minimum of 3 hours a week.
Right, right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, good. Because I say that to people, they look at me like, what? That's so wild. I'm like, really? How much time did you spend getting alcohol?
Right, exactly. Right. Well, it makes sense to me because those steps can be grueling. They can be, painful to look at, to see, and so on. And so if I'm digging all that up and I need ease and comfort, I'm going to get that ease and comfort while I'm in the midst of digging up all that stuff, that I'm not getting it from alcohol. I'm gonna need to get it somewhere, because otherwise it may be too difficult or painful or whatever. It might bring something up. That's how I'm
Exactly.
understanding it. Yeah.
So it makes sense to me that, especially given we read page 42 today, and and today we're learning about the approach and the demonstration and how to work with other alcoholics. It seems to me that this is one of the most important skills that I can learn. And when I look back at my life, coming to AA when I was 17, and how much time and effort, that I put in. I had therapists, sponsors, psychiatrists, stayed in institutions, didn't go to college, delayed going to college so I could have AA commitments. I mean, and nowhere in there was there a real training on how to work with other alcoholics. It was like, oh, one day, it's just going to magically come or something. Just kind of absorb what's going on around here. Well, y'all are not in agreement, first of all, on a lot of stuff. And I can tell from studying the big book that meetings are not the core. It's one night a week so that the newcomer may find the help that they need. And the real work is done outside the rooms, But I feel really cheated on my dedication to the program was there. The amount of time I put in was probably more amount of time I put into anything. And I didn't get the core education that I needed to
Right.
teach the number one skill that's going to save my life.
Right. Yeah, no, I've been around since 2009, and I would have to really rack my brain to think of a time when that was thoroughly discussed, gone over, mentioned even. I'd really have to think hard about it. Whereas I could easily think of dozens of times when I've heard meeting makers make it, play the tape through. It's like, I have played the tape through. It doesn't matter. And this, like, in this exact moment, I'm clearly aware of probably what's going to happen. It makes no difference at all whatsoever in this exact moment. None.
Yeah.
None. Yeah. So yeah, there's billions of times when I can think of that has been the topic. But I'm going to go with close to 5 or less times when I've heard, hey, this is going at the end of the day, this is going to be what keeps you until, especially the idea that this is going to be what gives the ease and comfort working with others while the causes and conditions are eradicated.
Perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, those are really my questions just in terms of working with others.
Awesome.
Yeah.